Hello, everybody. Here is homework assignment 1.2, chapter 1, section 2. Let's look at them. Determine whether the underlying number is a statistic or a parameter. In a study of 2,796 professors at a college, it is found that 55% own a computer. Okay, determine whether the underlined number, so the 56 is the underlying number. Okay, so what does that represent? That represents it's a characteristic that these professors own a computer. Okay, let's see. It's a parameter because the value is a numerical measurement describing a characteristic of the sample. Okay, it is a parameter. It says the statistic because the value is a numerical measurement describing the characteristic of a sample. No, that's not what a statistic is. It's a parameter because the value is a numerical measurement describing a characteristic of a population. Yes, because this is the population, not a sample. So that one's not going to be right. So far, that's the third one is the winner. It's not a statistic because the value is a numerical measurement describing the characteristic of the populations. That's not what statistics do. So the answer is the third one. Describe whether the data described below are qualitative or quantitative and explain why. The area codes such as 617 of the telephones of survey respondents. The area codes such as 617 of the respondents. Okay, so we're looking at only the area codes of the respondents. Now, what's the difference between qualitative and quantitative? Basically, you can look at in quantitative, you could do mathematics, you could find plus minuses. In qualitative, you can't. They're descriptions of characteristics of objects. The data are quantitative because they consist of counts of no. We're looking at area codes, and the data itself can't do it. We can't add or subtract those numbers. The data is quantitative because they don't measure or count anything. That's exactly what quantitative is supposed to do. It's supposed to count or measure something. The data is qualitative because they consist of counts and measurements. No, counts and measurements is quantitative. The data are qualitative because they don't measure or count anything. Ding, 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 ding. State whether the data described below are discrete or continuous and explain why. The times in minutes that callers are put on hold by a customer service call center. Now, we're looking at the times. Is it discrete or continuous? The data are discrete because the data can take on any value of an interval. Okay, that's not discrete. Discrete is a solid number, like the station of a TV. It's either channel 8 or it's not channel 8. The data are continuous because the data can take any value. Well, that's more like it, because if it can, the time can take any time. So far, it looks continuous. The data are continuous because the data can only take on specific values. Nope. Continuous could be any values, any decimals. The data is discrete because they take on specific values. Can only take on specific values. No. They can take on infinite values. So it's B. Again, if that's why I remember the definitions are, once you understand definitions, what does a discrete, what does continuous mean? Then we know what we're looking for, because it really doesn't matter what we're looking for. It's just what the way they describe these solutions, scenarios, you can see whether it's discrete or continuous. Determine whether the underlying number, which is 56%, is a statistic or parameter. That one looks very familiar. Ah, it's different because that one had, okay. A sample of professors is selected and it's found that 56 of them on television. The first one we had was these are the population. There are 2,700 or some number. This is just a sample of the population. So it's a statistics because the value is a numerical measurement describing the characteristic of a sample. Yep, that's a sample. That's character. So this one looks the winner so far. Is a parameter because the value is a numerical measurement describing a characteristic of a sample. No, by definition of parameter, it's not. Statistic because the value is a numerical measurement describing a characteristic of a population. Nope, it's not population. If you see population in there, it's not. This is a sample. So it is the first one. Number 5. State whether the data described below are discrete or continuous and explain why. The numbers of living grandparents that are different, that different people have. Okay, I mean, you can't have a 6.375 of a grandparent. So knowing that, so we're looking at people and grandparents, there's only a finite number of grandparents you can have. So it has to be discrete. It can't be continuous. So it can't be that one, can't be that one, because those are continuous. The data are discrete because the data can take on any value in an interval. It cannot take any value in an interval, because if the interval is between 0 and 1, I could take on 0.5. And you can't take on a 0.5 of a grandparent, not legally. So we're using C. Determine which of the 4 levels of measurement, nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio, is most appropriate. State in a region. Okay, it's not a ratio, we know that. It's not an interval, because we're looking at a numerical representation. How many states are in a region? So it's either nominal or ordinal. Again, if you look at the definitions of what they are, it just automatically, by definition, it tells us it's a nominal value, level of measurement. Identify the level of measurements of the data and explain what is wrong with the given calculation. Ooh, good. In a survey, the favorite foods of respondents are identified as 0 for Italian, 1 for Mexican, 2 for Chinese, and 3 for anything else. The average mean, or the average or the mean, we're going to talk about that later on in the next chapter, about when we find the average. We call that a mean in statistics. It's calculated for 629 respondents, and the result is 1.1. Okay. The data at the blank level of measurement. That's the same as a state in a region, because if it's got to be one of those, it's got to be a finite one. So this one has to be nominal. It's the nominal. What is wrong with a given calculation? The true average mean is, well, we don't know the true average means because we don't know the rest of the data, so we can't do that. Such data are not counts or measures of anything, so it makes no sense to compute the average. That's the winner. Such data are not counts or measurements or anything, so the average mean needs to be computed. You can't find the mean of qualitative data. There is nothing wrong with the data. There's very something very wrong with it, so it's B. Determine if the following statement represents a meaningful ratio, so the ratio level of measurement applies. A movie with a 4-star rating is twice as good as one with a 2-star rating. The ratio level of measurement applies. The ratio level of measurement does not apply. Of course, it doesn't apply, because a 4-star rating is a subjective rating. It's what people think something is. So you can't really say, well, if I'm watching a movie that's 2 stars, if I double it, if it's twice as good, it's going to get a 4-star. No, you can't say that. You might get 3 stars, or you might get a 5-star. So there's no, you can't quantify, or you can't quantify it, but you can't calculate qualitative data like that. Number 9, determine whether the given value is from a discrete or continuous data set. When a car is randomly selected, it is found to have a weight of 1,886.6 kilograms. So when a car is randomly selected, it has that weight. Now we're told a car has decimals numbers. Because it has decimals, and it all depends on what you add onto it. So if you add on a CD changer with your radio, you're going to change the weight. So because of that, it can't be discrete anymore. Now we're looking at continuous. So our answer has to be continuous. Let's see the why. A continuous data set, because there are infinitely many possible values that can, because once you have decimals, you can have an infinite number depending on what you put on the car. The data set is neither, has to be one or the other. The discrete data set, because there's a finite number, no, they're not a finite. Because again, you look your way in a car, the size of the tires, the hubcaps, if it doesn't have hubcaps. The discrete data set, because there are infinitely many possibilities, that's contradictory of each other. If it's discrete, it cannot be infinitely many. So it's got to be A. Which of the following is not a level of measurement? Nominal, ordinal, ratio, and interval. Well, quantitative is not a level of measurement. Quantitative. Good luck, everybody.